Roxana. We've known each other for over 2.5 years. She is a wonderful woman. She is a TEDx speaker. She has been working in learning and development for the past, I don't know, over 20 years. She has been working with emerging leaders, millennial leaders, and really helping, as she believes, lead different, think different, and work different, and inspiring what she says, creating a legacy for the future. And so she works with a lot of groups when it comes to team building and really getting to what we call the power of the team. And so without further ado, I'm hoping all of you get to be enriched by the wonderful things that she does out there and get inspired. So hopefully she'll send some of that love here tonight. I know she will. What am I saying? She will.
Oh my God. Thank you. It's so, it's exactly, I mean, it's the first time that I hear Veronica introduce me. So thank you. Thank you for that. That was a nice surprise. Okay, awesome. I will start sharing my screen so that we can move with this, because we have many things to discuss. And this is what, before we even start, I want to say, this is what I'm hoping we're going to do. So don't wait until the end for questions. You can put in your comments, use the chat, or feel free to unmute yourselves at any point, because this is the power of the differences that we have and how we are different and how that contributes to building trust and motivation rather than breaking trust and motivation. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And let's have a look at what we're going to talk about today. So what's in the menu for this wonderful dinner tonight that we're having together? We're going to look at some definitions because what Veronica didn't say is that my corporate days in L&D were basically in international law firms. And what that also means, one of the first things you learn when you work with lawyers is that you need to define things before you start talking about them. So if I took anything from my 15 plus years experience in that, it's this: define them so that everybody understands what we're talking about. And by the way, I'm in Toronto, Canada. It's 37 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and yeah, freezing rain. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but yeah, it's freezing cold. So there you go. But I'm originally from Romania, so I kind of remember what warm weather looks like and what spring looks like in March. So now you know. Okay, we're gonna also check individual differences in terms of communication styles, social styles, and also we're gonna look at building team psychological safety. And what I wanna talk about today are some tools around understanding what makes us different, how that actually helps us. And I'm sharing some of the things that I've noticed in my work with teams. I do a lot of team workshops and team coaching. I'm really passionate about bringing teams together and helping them become high value adding teams, not just high performing, because high performance comes with different kinds of stress levels. So we're talking about adding value as a team. So we're going to look at some tools and some things that we need to look at so that we can understand how we can build team trust and motivation based on how we are different. Yeah, high value teams. Doesn't that sound better than high performance teams? Awesome. All right. So I told you we're going to start here, definitions, but bear with me because I'm not going to stay on these too long. But the first thing, motivation. I found this definition that I really resonate with a lot Let me know if you have some comments on this and what are your thoughts on this definition. But really, it intrigued me because it's defined as a process. And I never thought about motivation as a process. And it's a process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behaviors. And that's important, right? We're working towards a goal. And it can be, okay, I'm going to just get a glass of water because I'm thirsty and I want to reduce that thirst. That's a goal. So that's one definition of it. Now, when we look at how we define trust, that's a belief. It's a firm belief, actually, in the reliability, truth, ability, or strengths of someone or something. Now, what I also find is these are very big words. And exactly, Andrea, what motivates you? Because when you look at the definition of motivation, yeah, that's pretty big. So I thought about, okay, let's break them down. And you know what? I didn't reinvent the wheel here, because we have motivation broken down into 3 elements. And Dan Pink, actually, his book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, is an amazing book. He also has a TED Talk about it. But basically, when we look at motivation, we look at these 3 elements: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And if we look at them even a little bit deeper, with autonomy comes our desire to direct our own lives. I want to feel that, okay, I'm in control as much as possible of the direction of my life. When it comes to mastery, he says, mastery is all about the desire that we have to improve. It's something that really matters to us. And that makes sense. Yes. That's good. It's on your book list. Awesome. You're going to get a lot of nuggets of it from that. And by the way, you're going to have the slides, and I've put together all of these resources that I'm sharing at the end of the presentation, because I have some books and some videos that I totally recommend that you have a look at, and because they really unveil a lot of what we mean when we talk about motivation and trust. And then purpose. Purpose is defined as desire to do things in service of something larger than ourselves. And that's where Veronica mentioned that I'm big on legacy. I'm big on leadership, as in leadership that's about legacy rather than hierarchy. And for me, this is my desire. This is my purpose. This is my drive, one of the drivers. But the reason why it's important to look at them like that is because when we look at motivation, you will find that there are a lot of people who say, yeah, I feel motivated on a scale from 1 to 10. I feel about, 7 in terms of motivation. And then we know, okay, what do we need to look at to understand where we feel motivated and where we don't? Because when we talk about, for example, I might have a sense of mastery and a sense of purpose, but not necessarily feel like I am directing my own life. Maybe there's something missing there in the autonomy chapter. So that is good to know, because if I know what the problem is or where the problem is, I know where to look and I know what I need to fix or think about fixing somehow. So this is where motivation comes in. Yeah, it's good to have a mix of all of them, but then if I don't, then what happens? How do I know what can I do to motivate myself, right? So bear this in mind: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about motivation. Now, when it comes to trust, that's another big word. And this is where Brené Brown comes in her Anatomy of Trust. And I've put the link to the video at the end of the presentation. That's a 22-minute video that's totally worth watching. And she came up with an acronym for the 7 elements of trust, and that's braving. We're not going to spend too much time on them, but I wanted to show them to you and put them here because she talks about boundaries and setting boundaries. She talks about reliability and that expectation that we have that people will do what they say will do. Another element of trust is accountability and our ability to own our mistakes. The vault, when it comes to that, is that belief that you're not going to share the information that's not yours to share, the information that I trust you with. Integrity, it's choosing to have a difficult conversation when I need to have a difficult conversation with you, even if that's going to be uncomfortable, but rather have it than not, rather have it now than later, rather preventing a conflict, rather addressing the issue to prevent a potential conflict. Non-judgment, that's another big one. Knowing that if I ask for help, you're not going to judge me for asking for help, and vice versa. And generosity, being generous with understanding that you might have the best intentions in your relationship with me and the other way around. Yes, I think owning our mistakes is a big one, but and see, this is why understanding what the elements of trust are, this is why this is so important. Because how often do we have those conversations when we say, oh, you know what, like you really broke my trust and like, I don't trust you anymore. And the other person might say, well, what do you mean you don't trust me anymore? Like, I'm always here for you. I always do what I say I would do. Yes, okay, maybe you are. But maybe that's not where the problem is. Maybe the problem is exactly in that, in owning. Are you owning your mistakes? Are you accountable for your mistakes? And then if I know where to look and I know exactly what hurts me and what broke a little piece of the puzzle of trust, that's going to be helpful for the both of us because we know what needs to be fixed. Even better, we know how we're going to set the framework of how this relationship is going to work. And by the way, that goes both at home and at work, because we're people, and we're taking all of our values, our beliefs, our experiences, we're taking everything with us. And by the way, now we're not even going anywhere. Like, we're working virtually, most of us. So they stay with us. I cannot be a separate person. But understanding how I can set those boundaries, how I can set that framework, that's going to be so valuable, because otherwise trust is such a big word. And your definition of trust might not be my definition of trust, and the other way around. So, but watch the video. It's absolutely a wonderful video to watch. Also, what I wanted to say is that we need to differentiate between psychological safety and trust. And here's why. When we talk about psychological safety, that is a group construct. And that's when we talk about teams, we talk about psychological safety. And that gives us a measure, right? Do I feel that it's okay for me to share my ideas, to share my thoughts, to share the solutions that I'm thinking about, even to make mistakes? Do I feel safe about my possibilities to try things out in this environment? That is where psychological safety comes in, and it's measured by team members, because they will know if that environment is safe for them to open up and to have those conversations or not. There are many people who, even before just emailing one another, they're wondering, oh, should I send this email? Is it okay for me to say that? Should I share that? Should I share it now? Should I share it with these people? So that gives you the kind of measure of how safe do you actually feel to share that in that particular environment. And as a team, we give each other the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going back to how we define trust, that generosity. When we think about how we relate to each other, I'm not going to think about whenever, for example, whenever somebody makes a mistake, I'm not going to think about the fact that they did it on purpose to hurt me. I'm going to always think about the fact that they had the best intentions. It was a process of trial and error, and they're going to own to that mistake. And then we're going to find a better way to do things. When it comes to trust, it's an individual construct, and that is what we build with each other. So when you think about the team, trust is what we can build as individuals with one another, and psychological safety is at the team level. The more the individuals of a team are able to build that trust between each other, the more the level of psychological safety grows in a team. I thought this was a crucial distinction to make between trust and psychological safety, because we talk about trust in teams, and it's important to know that trust is actually more individual, it does not apply necessarily to the group.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So is trust a precursor for psychological safety, vice versa?
You cannot have psychological safety in a team if the individual members of the team are not able to build those relationships based on trust. So yes, in short. But thanks for the question.
I have a question as well, Roxana.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about how easy that trust is to lose? For example, you could spend months working with your team, and then one thing happens and all of a sudden nobody trusts you anymore.
Yes, because you're breaking, and we go back to those 7 elements of trust. And we look at what's important for the team, what do we value as a team, and what did we as individual members of the team, what did we build that trust on? What was important? And then if I broke a lot of those elements, then, yes, that's going to break the trust, and it will at least look like nobody trusts me anymore. But there's going to be different levels, because then if you go and ask each of them might tell you different reasons of why they don't trust you anymore. They might not be even the same. Maybe somebody will say, yeah, because you made a mistake and you didn't let me know. Because you saw that it wasn't working and you didn't tell me. It can be for different reasons, but they all converge to the concept of trust. Yeah, and that's what makes it very easy to break, because trust is built, the research around how trust is built it's built in small moments, almost insignificant moments that we don't even think about. And they add up. And it's like bricks on a wall. And then, but these are the bricks of the foundation. So if you take one brick from the foundation, sometimes the whole house crumbles. Psychological safety requires only 2 people to begin with. Well, because if you think about two people as a team, yes, it can start there. Absolutely. I don't know. I think those are my thoughts. Since you asked, like, if anyone has other thoughts. Okay, awesome. Okay, so why we started here, and this is one of my favorite things to say, and I will say it forever. It's all personal, nothing is just business. This is why I called my business All Personal to begin with, by the way, because here's why. Because I really believe that it's all about how we manage ourselves, and that's intrapersonal, and how we manage our relationships with others, and that's interpersonal. It's all about that. At the end of the day, business is not business without people. That's not, you have no one to do business with. So, as I said, it starts with intrapersonal and it moves. Yeah, I can only manage me. Exactly. Yes, I love that. And I'm going to use the emotional intelligence framework because, and I know you know that, it all starts with ourselves. It starts with self-awareness, because if I know how I operate, why I operate that way, what my preferences are, and everything about how I react in different situations and with different people, then I understand how I can manage myself. And I understand what are the behaviors that I want to keep, what are the behaviors that I want to change, and how I can change them. And I'm gonna go through a process of trial and error and see what works, what doesn't, ditch what doesn't, and still move on. And then once I'm ready to do that, then I will be more aware about what other people are all about, how they operate, and I will understand how I can relate to them better. And that is what builds on the empathy and on my ability to understand, okay, they might not be like me, but I understand where they're coming from. And from there, I can move to relationship management. From my level of social awareness and my level of self-management, that's when I can manage the relationships with other people. And how many times have you seen a lot of people starting at that? I want to have great relationships with others. I want to understand how to form good relationships with other people. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying that it might be a little bit superficial and not really helpful, because I can do that long-term without it taking a toll on me if I don't understand how I operate and if I don't self-manage first. That's not the sustainable way. That's the quick fix. So why did I say that? And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do, and by the way, this is another book that I'm recommending, The Working Human by Douglas McGregor. And he came up with a theory, and we're going to do this together. I'm going to let you know in a minute what you will contribute with in this exercise. So he talks about two theories when it comes to people at work, theory X and theory Y. And he talks about people's attitude towards work, their need for direction, responsibility, motivation, and creativity. So a lot of elements that are related to motivation and trust. And what he says is, in theory X, it says this, that people dislike work, find it boring, and will avoid it if they can. When it comes to the sense of direction, theory X says that people, other people at work, think about that, must be forced or bribed to make the right effort. When we talk about responsibility, he says in this theory X, People would rather be directed than accept responsibility, which, by the way, they avoid. Motivation. People are motivated mainly by money and fear about their job security. And when it comes to creativity, most people have little creativity except when it comes to getting around rules. So that's what Theory X says about how people work. Other people work, not us, others. In Theory Y, when it comes to attitude, yes, people need to work and want to take an interest in it. Under the right conditions, they can enjoy it. Direction, people will direct themselves towards a target they accept. When it comes to responsibility, yes, they will seek and accept responsibility under the right conditions. Motivation, under the right conditions, people are motivated by the desire to realize their own potential. And creativity and ingenuity are widely distributed and grossly underused. Now, think about it, look at them, and think about where would you put other people when it comes to work? Where would you place them, rather in Theory X or in Theory Y? And you can share some percentages. It doesn't have to be, if it's 100% one or another, fine. But what would be, yes, Theory X is pretty bleak. Yes, I agree with you, Marcella. But what would be your take? What are the percentages that you would, what would be Theory X? What would be Theory Y? What percentage?
I'll go first because I think I'm the youngest one in the group and I have the least experience. So I personally think, you always have your Theory X's in any job. I would say like 30-70 to Theory Y. I believe personally, if you're interested in personal growth and career growth, you're and all of us here are interested in career growth because we're obviously spending the time after our job to be here. I think most people will be Theory Y in that case, but you always have the people that avoid work as much as possible or away on teams and are not there. But they're very easy to single out. Most people know who they are, in my opinion.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for sharing that.
So I'm going to add to that. I'm sorry. So I'm thinking that it all depends, right? It depends where you're at within your career. I think it depends on what job you have or what the culture is. So I think it a little bit, to where you're at in life may depend on some of this. But I think it's a good thing to look at and kind of compare, right? Because you don't really think about it unless you have something there to yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Joe.
This is Stormy. I'm not on camera. Apologies. I'm driving. I'm on Bluetooth, being safe. It's okay. But just listening in, it's something I wanted to participate in. What I would say is there is, in my perspective and in my experience, is I have never met a Theory X 100% or Theory Y, but there is very much a spectrum of all of these behaviors, and it's guided very much by the behaviors of others around us, the culture, leadership, our own experiences, certainly what the gentleman before me was mentioning, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but where we are in our careers. I would say, there in certain situations, I might veer towards a Theory X. I would say that I definitely am always, wanting to embrace Theory Y, but have definitely been in organizations and in organizational person don't allow me to work towards or work to be elevated and empowered to have that attitude and that direction. And I'm kind of almost pushed down into that Theory X manner of work. and culture and thought process. So those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. And yes, absolutely. It really talks a lot about the environment in which we operate. But that's one thing. Okay, so, and I agree, there is no 100% in theory X, theory Y. And again, we're talking about our perception of how other people operate at work. Now, we're going to look at the same thing, but think about yourselves. How do you operate at work? Where would you place yourself? When you talk, would you rather, what's the percentage here for you, for theory X and for theory Y? Okay, why? I fight X all the time. Okay, awesome.
Good answer.
Okay. Awesome. You can share.
You
in
know,
the
I had to
chat
say
and
that
share.
because I
Yeah,
challenged the status quo.
For sure.
I'm always button up against it.
yeah. Yeah, I was liberated from X. Yes, wonderful. Awesome, that sounds
I
great.
think there was a theory Z as well. Like,
Mhm.
correct me. I think this is McGregor X and Y, and then I think Herzberg came up with theory Z. Am I right?
Yeah, later on.
Yes.
Yes, because the way in which we work has changed so much. But let me tell you this. When we look at, and yes, absolutely, there are extremes, right? We're talking about extremes here. And we're very much talking about the industrial age versus the digital age. If you look at everything, and where theory Y comes in and says under the right conditions, so definitely environment and culture are going to be super important. But here's what's happening. When you ask people to look at other people and how they operate, the conversation can go on and on. It all depends, but we're going to be more inclined to put others in theory X, or at least a percentage of theory X. And that's fine. I mean, yes, if they don't have the right environment and the culture is not right, they might fall under theory X anyway. Yes, context rules. But here's the thing. When we think about ourselves, the majority of us will think about ourselves under theory Y, or at least the percentage is higher when we talk about ourselves at work under theory Y. And here's the thing, think about it this way. If we all think about ourselves that we're more theory Y than X, what does that say in a workplace environment when we talk about motivation, when we talk about building trust, when my expectations about me are that I fall under theory Y? Take the sense of direction. I can direct myself. I don't need to be forced to make an effort. And you think about me as in theory X, and you think I need to be forced to make the right effort. And take it in the context of hybrid work and why a lot of people struggle with that. Virtual work and why a lot of employers struggled with that. Because just the fact that I couldn't see you at the desk, sitting down and working, giving me that perception that you're working, I cannot build my trust with you just because of that. And that already, so we start here. We start with how do we think about ourselves and how might other people think about themselves? And most of us, especially today, will fall under theory Y. Or at least these are the expectations. And why? Let's look at these individual differences and where they come from. First of all, unconscious bias. Well, you know what? We like it or not, we're going to be biased no matter what, because bias is human, and look at how diverse it is. And these are just a few types of biases that you will find. And yes, we're going to move up and down a scale of how biased or maybe less biased we are, but it's going to be there. And I put the proximity bias in bold because when you talk about virtual work, that kind of bias, that can influence how we build trust. That can have a huge impact on whether we break or make trust. Because we like people who are like us or who we perceive are more like us, who are more familiar or we're more familiar with them. So if I'm going to see you more often face to face, rather than one of my other colleagues that are going to be virtual and I'm just going to see them maybe once or twice a week, it's easy to give a preference for those colleagues on the team that I see more often in person in a hybrid work environment. So there are a few resources that I wanted to share with you here. And if you're curious, you can measure. And there are hundreds, I think, types of biases in the implicit association test at Harvard, but it's amazing to see where you're not biased and maybe where you are and you didn't even know about it. And that affects how we look at the others. But if I understand how I might be subjective, because this is what bias does, it makes us even more subjective and we build on that subjectivity, then I know I will stop and ask some questions before I make a decision. I have enough issue with conscious bias. Yes, well, okay, so maybe you don't want to uncover the unconscious one. But at least, so for me, this was just understanding how many types of biases there are. I mean, even accents. You know, they made a study and when it comes to speaking English, the study says we tend to trust more those people who are native speakers because they have less of an accent, because we perceive them as more knowledgeable.
Yeah, and if you also want to see your bias and mind bias in work or in action, see the movie Crash, and you'll never see it the same way again.
Crash, okay.
Yeah, Crash.
Noted.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what. Yeah, HR is not a fan of that. Well, yeah, guess what? HR can be subjective too. We know that. Okay. Second one, communication styles. Could you not understand your accent? Okay, see? He said crush, I think. I really remember that. See, talking about accents. Communication styles, and we just look at, it's as simple as looking at action, process, people, or ideas oriented. And by the way, what are you? So you can put it in the chat. So people who are action oriented, they talk about results, objectives, performance, productivity, challenges, accomplishments. And yes, they might be perceived as more pragmatic and direct, and sometimes impatient, and maybe fast because they jump from one idea to another, and energetic. And then process oriented when it comes to communication. So they do talk a lot about figures and methods and planning and testing and trying and analysis. And yes, they will be perceived as systematic and logical and insensitive and prudent and patient. People who are people-oriented, who talk about people, relationships, of course, teams, motivation, communication, feelings, team spirit, cooperation, beliefs and values, growth. And yes, of course, they will be perceived as spontaneous and kind and warm. And they can be also subjective, talk about subjectivity, because they connect with people a lot. So, and they will have their preferences. Yes, it does look like DISC. It's just that these are things that you will notice in the way in which people communicate, the words that they use, how they talk about what they talk about. And people who are ideas oriented, who talk a lot about concepts and innovation, creativity, new ways and methods, problems and solutions. And they are perceived as imaginative, charismatic, sometimes difficult to understand because for them it's clear, it's in their head. But how well they express it to others, that's a different conversation. But just thinking about these, the problem with that is it is crash. It is CRASH. See, like, and C+, we get distracted. So you add distractions on top of how different we are, and there you go. But so what do you resonate most with? So you can put that in the chat. Which one? And the truth is, you can also have a combination of preferences. You can be action-oriented and idea-oriented, or you can be process-oriented and action-oriented, and that's attention right there, because sometimes you're patient, sometimes you're not. But here's the thing. I'm a much of lots of those. And that's important to know, because we expect others will communicate with us the same way that we communicate with them. And if I'm a person who's more process oriented when I communicate, so if I talk more about planning and organization and figures and methods, and I talk to somebody who's an action oriented person, and I expect them to communicate with me the same way that I communicate with them, that's going to be a communication breakdown right there. Because I cannot have, that's an unreasonable expectation to have. And yet we have it. We expect that they will give us the information packaged in the way in which we need the information to be packaged. And then when and I've seen this a lot in some of the teams, and they say, if I don't understand something, it's because you didn't communicate to me properly and correctly. Yes, it's also how you listen. Have I listened to the words you were using and to what you were saying? But how many times do we get into conversations where we say, well, you know, you're not listening to me. You don't understand what I'm saying. Because I'm focused on what I'm saying and how I'm saying things. And then when you talk to me, it's like, if you have a completely different communication style, it's like we're using different kinds of different languages almost. So if I don't understand something, it's up to me to make sure that I understand it. So I'm going to need to ask for information from you the way that that information makes sense to me. Can you hear the words coming out of my, yes. Because when we talk about communication, we talk about expressing it, not about listening to it. I stopped expecting people to meet me where I am. It was frustrating. Yes, it is frustrating. Tell me about it. It is, because you can't, communication is a two-way street. And the reality is, I'm responsible for how I communicate to you, but then I'm also responsible for understanding what you're saying to me, or making sure that I'm clarifying what you're saying to me. Okay. And that's not even all. I mean, that's just a communication style. It's worse with social styles. Look at that. You have people who are amiables, expressives, drivers, analyticals, and yes, it will have a correlation with people, ideas, results, and process-oriented. Some of us will tell more. Some of us will ask more. Definitely amiable. Thanks, Alex. Okay. See? But the thing is, it adds up. Yes, humans are squishy one. Okay, crunchy on the inside. Okay. That's an interesting concept. Like, I need to unpack that image now. Godwin, you want to say something?
No.
You unmuted yourself. That's why I'm asking. Just to make sure.
No.
Okay. So, okay, many differences. And there's one last one, because then it's a never-ending story. We talked about generations. And here are the preferences when it comes to generations. And there's a strong connection between how we used to learning, the formal learning, the school system, and how we perceive working. And if you look at the preferences for each generation, we start to understand more about why they clash, especially when it comes to having difficult conversations. Because for baby boomers, it's more of, okay, the boss is the boss, that's the authority, they're there for a reason, and we have rules that we need to follow, and that's that. You break the rule, you're going to be punished. That's it. It's that simple. When it comes to Gen X and millennials, if you look at these two generations, when we talk about just feedback, Gen X perceives feedback more as criticism and are more focused on fixing what's not working and talking about what's not working. And no jokes about, okay, yes, well. Whereas millennials talk feedback in terms of positive reinforcement. There's a reason why parenting became such a big thing with the millennials and not with Gen X. And it's their style of living, of working, and it's like all about building on strengths, building on that positive reinforcement. So there's no surprise that the leader is going to be perceived as a coach rather than the competence as it is for Gen X. And for Gen Z, and by the way, I have two of them at home, and I can tell you, yes, I really resonate with this. For them, feedback is a dialogue. And I'm not talking about, yeah, okay, it can be positive, it can be negative, but let's have a dialogue and see where we go from here. Because I don't want to know just what doesn't work. I want to know, why are we even doing that thing that's not working? Do we need to do it? And let's have a dialogue around that. And the way that they perceive, for them, leadership is understanding that you're in it with us, that you're one of us. And it doesn't talk about generation. It talks about, do you get me? And do I get you? And it comes from that need of dialogue. But again, it comes with all of these perceptions about how we learn and how we work. And we grew the reality is there's been a huge development from learning and working as a privilege to it being necessary, to it being available, and to it being everywhere. And that's why we see so many changes in such a short time when it comes to how we work, because there's just more millennials joining the workforce, more Gen Zs joining the workforce. And that's going to change because they come with their own perceptions and their own styles. So what does that mean for teams? Who do you think is a big... that's a great question, Veronica. And I think you and I debated a lot on this topic. Yeah, this is why, if you look at this, I mean,
you know, I had to
work
see
just
that
became,
because
yeah, I know.
you wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, if I can chime in for a moment,
Yeah.
I've seen it. It kind of looks like a bell curve for what I've seen. Interestingly enough, the hump of the bell curve is right at the borderline of Gen X and millennials, oddly enough. Yep. Late 30,
I can see that.
Late 30 somethings are the ones that are, hey, I can do better, I'm out of here. And they snap their fingers. Really, they do. And then the baby boomers come behind them and say, you know what? These kids are right. I'm going. And then the millennials are like, wait a minute. Where's everybody going? What do you guys think?
What about Gen X in that equation?
That's what I'm saying. The hump is right between Gen X and the millennials.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I'll put my 2 cents. You know, I've always said is the millennial generation has a high percentage of entrepreneurs where Gen Z is coming on the heels of it. So if you think about entrepreneurial and the mindset and what we've been talking about today, that comes to, hey, I don't need you, you need me, and I can go and do my own thing. Yeah. And so there's Roxanne and I sit on the precipice between millennials and Gen X, and we talk about that a lot. I mean, this could be like a whole topic on its own, right? I love this topic because it's a huge opportunity right now with all of us as Agilists, because we kind of already been like there on the other side. We've been trying to invite people to come over, like Alice, you can come to Wonderland, come on with us, right? Go down the rabbit hole. And now we have a huge opportunity because there's more and more of this catalyst and push out there because of that group saying, we don't like what we see and we want different.
I think if I can add something, so I think millennials have just different expectations and different wants, right? I mean, just from what I've seen, and their work-life balance expectations are a lot different than what some of us grew up on the Generation X side, right? Some of us are extremists when it comes, because we're from the Generation X and oh my goodness, we're just wired that way. But millennials are like, hey, work-life balance. If not, we're out of here, you know, because we don't need this. And, you know, and it's more of a different mindset. But I love your idea on the dialogue of the Generation Z, because we got one of those at home. And yes, everything is like, but the why, and they question why, and it's a conversation. And I actually love that. And it's actually a very positive conversation about very extreme topics and very extreme points of views, which is pretty cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's and it's not about right or wrong. It's about finding a solution to where do we go from here, and what's the best approach. That's it. Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting generation. Alex, I think you just said you're in that generation, so you're talking to me.
Yes, I am.
Because it's like a mesh. I think the smush is what you were saying, Marcelo. That generation is, I feel like, is a combination of all those three in this weird, interesting combination, they come with it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's an interesting generation.
Especially because like the learning is everywhere. It's like they've grown up with information on the tip of their fingers, on the tip of their eyes. It's like everything is around. They just, if they need information, they can find it anywhere. They don't have to work that hard to get information. You know.
Yeah. And I definitely think, you know, at least Gen Z. I was born in 1999. I think Gen Z definitely has, like, at the core of its heart, an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, people are more focused on, oh, I can make money off making a YouTube channel or like TikTok, and like you could see these kids growing up having that in mind. Like, they don't think, it's not like, you know, Generation X, which worked at the same job for 15, 20, 25 years and was on benefits and focused on 401k. I just see that as very different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're like a reboot of Gen X, because for us, and yes, I'm outing myself as a Gen Xer, okay, just at the very edge, okay, when computers became a thing, and I was actually watching a video this morning of Steve Jobs talking about how he actually started Apple. For us, it was like, wait a minute, you mean I can start typing some stuff on this keyboard that makes some stuff get printed out, that generates a report that someone will pay me for? Hold my beer.
Yeah, I kind of think of, like, you know, the biggest, you know, entrepreneurs today, like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. You know, where do they fall in this category?
I think
they were visionaries as well, right?
Yeah. I think they probably learned some lessons from the boomers and said, I can do this better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was somebody else wanted to say something, and I think I interrupted. No. Yeah.
I think that was me just challenging Alex.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, but it's so it's gonna be interesting, and I love what you said about entrepreneurship, because again, the perception on working is it's everywhere, and I don't need to depend on somebody else offering me a job. I can create the job for myself. But again, it builds, and you see that for me, it was interesting looking at this, because you can see how we built on each generation and what they came with. So it's not, and that's the way I love looking at these, because there's a lot of differences, but also a lot of things that we've learned from one generation to another. And this is what brought us to this point here. So two more things that I want to let you know about, just some tools that we can talk about when it comes to teams. And again, a team, and I love this definition, the team defined as a group of people who trust each other, because otherwise they're just a group. And there's groups and there's teams, they're real teams or just project teams, and there's a difference, and you can feel that difference. And we talk about team psychological safety. So what I've noticed that really helps when it comes to helping the team understand where they're at and how they can build on that psychological safety is understanding the team stages and the needs for each of the team stages. And I know, like, you're familiar with the forming, storming, norming, performing, and mourning, or adjourning model of team stages. And if you look at what the needs are in each stage, that explains a lot about why exactly Bruce Tuckman. That explains a lot about what works and what doesn't work in a team. And it's crucial to help the team understand where they're at. and understand that every team ever, they're going to go through these stages and they're going to have these needs, and build on the differences, build on what makes the individuals of a team different, and build on those differences and build on that complementarity rather than, and it's crucial for them to understand what their needs are depending on the stages that they're at are. And I said stages because what I found is that team stages are not linear. So you could have a team. I did this with one of the teams that I was working with, and these were their results. And it's because they're not going to be all in one or the other. They're going to be in many stages at the same time, less or more. Because you have a high turnover, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have people leaving, you're going to have people joining the team. A lot of those joining the team are going to be at a forming stage. And then as they start to understand how things are and start to get more integrated into the team, you might have some storming going on in there. Yes, exactly. It's a continuum because teams are the sum of their individual members. And they really depend on that dynamic and what happens between those members and how they build that trust, how they are motivated, how they feel engaged. And it all comes with needs that these team members have as they perceive the stages that they're at with that team. And so what happened with this team, for example, they were moving back and forth between performing and norming. But with the pandemic, they used to be a co-located team that converted to virtual. And now they're converting back to hybrid. So they're moving. Yeah, I can't be fully high performing when I don't even understand what the rules are anymore. And what's the framework that we operate within? And then there are going to be people who are going to resist the new status quo. Some of them will participate more, some of them will participate less. So you will have this exactly continuum of stages and how people perceive where they are. So that's one thing that I find is super helpful when you look at teams and helping them understand how they can build psychological safety, because they will have different needs that need to be addressed so that they feel that that environment they operate in is safe for them to contribute. If I don't feel that the environment is safe, how am I supposed to be contributing and feel motivated and engaged? Are you kidding me? No, I'm gonna leave. Another thing that I love is looking at how people make an impact. And that's it's a business assessment tool, and it's called the Game Changing Index. And the reason why I'm showing it to you is because we've been, as organizations and in teams, we've been measuring personality, experience, expertise. We haven't really measured how people are making an impact. And when we talk about impact, we talk about the energy that we naturally put into things that makes us feel motivated and engaged rather than depleted and exhausted. So when we talk about motivation, we know that it's internal. We know that it's all about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So the way in which I would rather be recognized for the impact I'm making, the things that I'm putting my energy in, that's going to matter to me when it comes to motivation. And it's going to matter to me in how I build trust with other people, because if I'm going to be valued for the impact that I'm making and that I love making, I will feel motivated and engaged because I will feel seen and understood. And at the end of the day, this is what we all need, the main 3 emotional needs that we have: being heard or seen, understood, and appreciated or valued. So I just want to show you this 5 ways, and then you can look at these definitions. Yes, nothing better than being appreciated and valued. Exactly. See? Yes. And that is what keeps me going. And when you look at these definitions, basically what we see and what this is useful for is because we can get to understand, regardless of personality, because you can be an introvert or an extrovert and have the same kind of impact. It's not about that. It is all about what makes us feel driven and engaged and energized. It's about energy, drive, impact, and motivation, not about personality. You can be all of those things that we were talking about. You can be a boomer, you can be an Xer, you can be a millennial and have the same kind of impact. We mentioned people who are visionaries: Elon Musk, Bezos, Steve Jobs. Even them, look at the generations. Like, the impact that they made is similar. Doesn't matter the generation. Doesn't matter what I focus on when I communicate. Doesn't matter my personality. And by the way, personalities, latest research is personality changes every 20 years, but it changes. Wow. It's not fixed. So you can imagine, and impact fluctuates. But wouldn't it be nice to know when you talk about teams, and I just have this case study, and I'm gonna end it with this. For example, what Nike did with the GC index, because what it did for them is it helped align the team to their motto. It is our nature to innovate. And it was easy for those team members who are more idea focused, for the game changers and for the strategists, thinking about revolutionary ideas and envisioning possibilities. For them, it was very easy to resonate with the motto, it is our nature to innovate. But the need to use this came because they wanted those people who were implementers, who were those people who were hands-on, who wanted to build something. They are all about deadlines and taking action and who does what and by when, making those plans possible. Or the polishers, who are the ones who want to improve things. They're really the ones who look at a Ford and they see a Rolls Royce, and for them it's like it's that easy to take it there. Or the playmakers, who are these diplomats who need to listen to all sides of the story before they even make a decision, and they gather data this way. It was more difficult to have these people feel included so that they feel motivated. And that's when knowing the kind of impact that they prefer to make and to have, that the things that they naturally put energy into, it really helped the whole team understand how they make a contribution. And they came up with this beautiful, beautiful description of the motto, it is our nature to innovate. Game changers think something nobody else thinks. And then you have people who build something that nobody else builds. These were the implementers. Or improve something that already exists. These were the polishers. Or envision possibilities, the strategists, and accelerate them through new relationships, the playmakers. And then, because they felt included, they felt motivated. Because if I don't feel included, how motivated am I going to feel? And yes, I lied when I said I would leave you with this. I want to leave you with this because I found this definition. I don't know who said it, and I'm so frustrated that I don't know, but I really love it. Leaders amplify the uniqueness of others. And when we talk about our differences, we don't talk about differences. We talk about how unique we are and how all of us contribute in different ways. And the truth is, and I know that Veronica and I are very resonate with this a lot, is that we can all have a game-changing contribution to make because of this uniqueness. So, and we do have, by the way, an event where we talk about the game changers, because these are the contribution that game changers can make. So you have all of these resources. I've shared the slides already, so you have all of the links. So if you want to join Veronica and I in the Are You a Game Changer? Come Find Out event on April 13th.
And we made sure it was an opposite Wednesday of South Florida Agile Association. Yes. I actually made a point to look at our dates. So anytime we have an event, we want it to be an off Wednesday. You see how like that? I was already thinking of the love.
Thank you, Veronica. We love you too.
This was so awesome, Roxana. Thank you so much. Do you guys have any questions for Roxana?
So great job. I think, again, you know how it works. Even if you're a speaker here, you can't leave. So again, I don't know if they told you that as well, but you see that Veronica's here forever, ever, right? So we are going to count on you. And remember, like we said just a couple of days ago, we ran this great conference. We're going to be doing one next year. So we're expecting you to come down here from Canada.
I've been trying to get her to come to
all
Florida.
The way.
All the way. If we have to go send somebody to pick you up, we will. Okay. So we will drive you down here somehow. But I think you'll have a great time and you might not want to leave, depending on the weather.
Warmer. It will be a nice warm exchange.
Absolutely.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking forward to some warmer weather. Yes, that's a good selling point.
Just don't bring the cold weather over here. Okay, whatever you do, we want to make sure it stays nice and kind of cool, but not cold.
Not the Canadian cold. No, thank you.
Yeah, none of that. So again, an excellent job. So team members, just understand, if you have additional questions, don't just go ahead and put it in the chat. We will make sure that it gets answered somehow, because I know we do have a time box that we want to follow. And I do want to let you know, again, we're doing this every other week, but we also do this on Saturday. So on Saturday, we have like a coaching clinic where we kind of help the team members that are really trying to dive into understanding Agile. We have breakout sessions with Lean Coffee. So really, really exciting stuff that we've been doing for a long time now. Okay, we keep giving back to the community. Again, I forgot the number count of how many people we've helped out, but it's been extreme, right? A lot of people have received jobs. And again, this is a really tight community. So we really thank you guys for being here. Final words, Roxanne, if you had final words to give to the team here, what would that be? What are the final words?
Okay. You got me here. I think, I think for me, when it comes to all of the differences between who we are, how we work, how we live our lives and everything, it just comes down to one thing, which is one of my other favorite quotes, which is on learning. No surprise about that. I'm a learning geek. So learning is movement from moment to moment. And I think especially in this world today, if we understand how important this is and how true this is, I think we can be as agile as it can get, to be honest.
Can I ask you a question, Roxana? What's your favorite book?
Favorite book? Lust for Life.
I will write that one down.
Lust for Life, but it's a biography. It's written by Irving Stone, and it's a biography of Van Gogh. Wow. And by the way, there was a movie, Lust for Life, made after the book. And by the way, I think Van Gogh was such a game changer And if he lived today, he would be a bazillionaire.
Wow.
But hey, that's just my take.